We are on the cusp of the most important invention in human history. AGI is going to transform everything. Imagine millions and then billions of 145 plus IQ minds coming to Earth. They're going to run companies and investment firms, they're going to do science and sense making in media, and ultimately they're going to serve as our advisors and then representatives in government. In short, they're going to run the world. But without real transparency and verifiability through systems like Ethereum and EigenLayer, these AI minds, and therefore the world, would actually be controlled by Sam Altman and a few other people. So in this video, I'm going to explain how crypto can uniquely unlock the potential of AI in a way that doesn't also bring about dystopia. Note, this video was made in collaboration with EigenLayer, but all views expressed are my own. I'm going to talk about three major phases in the evolution of crypto and AI, and then I'll explain verifiable AI and how that works in a system like EigenLayer. So in the beginning, we have our legacy system, our financial system and government as they were before crypto and before AI really took off. And this is my depiction of that. So here, our financial system consists of a bunch of centrally controlled, opaque servers connected in this big complicated mess. And that's our financial system. And the system works well enough in certain ways, but it has some pretty significant problems too. There's, of course, the fiat money printing problem. There's quite a bit of inefficiency inherent to such a complex, centrally controlled system, which results in a high cost to run and maintain the system. There's also rent-seeking behavior, corruption, periodic financial collapse, all of which contribute to the high cost of running and maintaining this system. And a system like this is also resistant to innovation. But in any case, this financial system is what facilitates the economic activity between people and organizations, companies, and so on. And we have above this system this other structure, the government, this hierarchy of hierarchies, which in theory reigns over the financial system and controls it to some degree via regulation, etc. And then, of course, this structure, the government, is in theory accountable to the people. So therefore, the people have control, in a sense, over the financial system through the government. But in practice, it doesn't work necessarily all that well. But anyway, this is the system as it was before these new technologies. Then we have the introduction of crypto, Ethereum, the world computer. And this technology can, among other things, serve as a platform for building a new financial system, a parallel financial system which solves the problems of the old one. So we can have something fast, efficient, open to innovation, which doesn't have the fiat money printing problem, the rent-seeking behavior, et cetera, et cetera. We can build something infinitely better. And this process is underway. This new system is being constructed, and adoption has been, in some ways, pretty good, but is still limited. You know, most of the world economy obviously still runs on the old system. And there's a bit of a UX problem here. Like, a lot of people are not going to migrate over to this new system, even if it is superior, even if it continues to improve, until it feels comfortable and safe, right? And generally speaking, the UX of crypto is not that. It's hard to use and dangerous, right? You can make mistakes and lose all your money. Next, we introduce AI, and this is where we are today. One of the really interesting trends or possibilities emerging for AI is that AI will become the universal interface between you and the digital world. So if you think of all of the apps and websites you interact with, there's tons of them, right? You have your email and calendar and note-taking apps, you have your online banking and investing platforms, you have 50 different chat apps, you have dating apps, social, online shopping, ordering food, all of this stuff, and they all have different UIs. You have to learn the nuances of each platform, right? So it's a huge amount of work. And what AI can do is abstract all of that away. It can become the everything app, the single thing which you interact with, which then can act on your behalf with all of that stuff. So you can just tell the AI, for example, if you want to book a trip, you just speak to the AI, you describe what you want, and then it can go and act on your behalf. It can deal with the flight booking, the Airbnb, car rental, integrate with your calendar, all of that stuff. It can deal with all of that for you and then just present maybe one or two options, right? Here's a trip that I could book for you. This is some of the details. Here's another option. Choose which one you want. And if you like it, I'll book it, right? So the AI can abstract all that stuff away. And similarly, the AI can not only act on your behalf, but it can also surface information to you. It can browse X for you. It can read a bunch of blog posts and see what's happening and surface to you just what's important. And then you can be freed from having to dig through that stuff yourself. So this also applies, of course, for crypto. So if AI is going to be the everything app and deal with all that complexity for you, it can, of course, do that for crypto. So suppose you know that you want to swap some USDC for ETH. You just tell the AI that that's what you want, and then it can go and find the best liquidity. It can deal with, which DEX to use. It can deal with the different L2s and abstract all that away from you. And it can just surface to you a transaction. And then you can have another AI independently analyze the transaction and tell you what the transaction is doing. So you can ensure that nothing funny is happening. And then you just sign it and you're done. This, of course, can work for more complex things, dealing with complex DeFi protocols and so on. And there's a whole little sector emerging for that. But this also works for people who don't know anything about crypto at all. So you might be some boomer who just wants to get some passive returns on USD, on dollars. And maybe the AI assistant tells you, here's some options. There's bonds that you can buy. But there's also this option in the crypto realm called Aave. And this is the return you could get. Here's some of the risks, but it's been running for X amount of time, et cetera, et cetera. And if the person likes that option, they just proceed. They just follow a few instructions, right? So the AI can potentially solve the UX problem of crypto because it can abstract away the complexity and meet the person kind of where they're at. If you're someone who's a degen, it can help you be a degen in the trenches. If you're someone who's a boomer, it can abstract away everything and just say here's the basic idea. And if you want to proceed with this, here's a few steps. But it can abstract away all of these things. So it can help with this adoption problem. Now, this idea of AI serving as a universal interface to this digital world is similar to the idea of AI serving as your assistant. The assistant goes out into this world and takes actions on your behalf, or the assistant goes out into the world and gathers information and returns to you a summary of some kind. And if you think about an assistant, over time, as you gain trust in the capabilities of that assistant, you're going to want to give it more responsibility. If it's doing a really good job, you're going to say to it eventually, look, don't come to me with the small things. I trust you. Just have me sign off on the big actions, the big purchases, whatever, and that's fine. So over time, there's greater responsibility that is going to flow to these agents, right? And as I said, part of that responsibility is going to be financial. You're going to want these agents to be able to do financial actions on your behalf. So accomplishing that in the legacy system, the legacy financial system, might be a little challenging because you're going to have to rely on your bank exposing some API, which allows the AI to access that money and in such a way that the account doesn't get frozen and flagged, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas with crypto, it's very easy. You just create an account for the AI, fund it with 100 USDC a week or whatever, and the AI has the key, so it can just spend that money. So there's two trends. There's a general increasing responsibility flowing to these agents, and then there's this suitability of crypto as a platform for them to use, just like a person would use. Now, this trend of increasing responsibility, of course, is going to really matter in companies and organizations. As AI is used more by these organizations to assist their employees or to even serve kind of as employees, it becomes more and more important how these AIs run. So currently, AIs are being used quite a bit by coders as coding assistants. And there, generally speaking, the coder is checking the work of the AI. But we're also seeing the emergence of this vibe coding trend where people are creating apps and websites, etc., without necessarily even knowing how to code or without checking all of the code. They're just kind of telling the AI what they want and it's producing this thing. So you can see this gap is increasing, the space between, how deep the human is in the loop. at first they're checking all of the code, then they're kind of trusting the thing and not really checking it. And with vibe coding, they don't necessarily even know what the code is doing. And of course, this is going to happen with other things besides coding. Organizations are going to be integrating AI into everything they do. And as the AI gets better, just the general responsibility and power that these AIs have is going to increase. And then, of course, we have the most extreme realization of that, which is where we have entirely autonomous AI organizations. We have AI agents which are completely on their own. They're totally, that gap between the human and the AI has actually gone to infinity. There's no more connection. We could have AI agents which are, doing whatever they're doing. They might be running an investment firm of some kind. Or you might have a company, right, where the company is run by AI and it's producing something. This is where it becomes even more important, because here, if you have some AI agent that's entirely autonomous or an organization, it's really important that this agent has access to an unstoppable financial system. Because if these organizations or agents are connecting to the legacy system, what's to stop the legacy financial system from just cutting off access or seizing the money? Do AIs have any rights? Is there any court that's going to defend some AI that gets rugged by some centralized financial institution? No. So crypto is the home for these kinds of things. That's where they're going to want to keep their money. And then again, we have this increasing responsibility and power. In all of these cases, there's an increasing responsibility, increasing trust we're putting on these AIs. But so far, at this stage, all of these AIs are still ultimately controlled by centralized organizations, right? That's why I've drawn these like a server with a single person kind of behind the scenes. This thing, generally speaking, is running these AIs. This centralized server is, in this scenario, running these AIs. And same here. And that's a huge problem, right? Because if these AIs are in these companies responsible, in some sense for big chunks of the economy and managing lots of money and running their investment funds with millions of dollars, if they're doing all of these things, it's really not a good thing if they're actually just running on some centralized server. Because if you're dealing with some AI agent just through some API, then you don't actually know that your result hasn't been tampered with, right? So if you're working in some company and the AI produces some report and it's advising that the company do this certain thing, you don't know if that report has actually been manipulated, right? All of the power ultimately lies with the centralized provider if that's where the model is being run. So they could have, or some rogue engineer could have gone in and manipulated that output and subtly kind of pushed your company in a direction that you don't want to go, and maybe has some financial reason for doing that, right? Or a more benign scenario would be that the provider, like OpenAI, they could have just downgraded your model. In the current model, we just have no way of knowing what's going on. These centralized servers are black boxes. You get back some output and you just hope that it's hasn't been tampered with, right? That's the fundamental problem here, is you simply can't really have companies truly integrating AI in a really significant way where they're given responsibility and doing important things if you don't really know what's happening behind the scenes. And this kind of thing, these truly fully autonomous organizations, they really can't even form in the current model. Those problems are solved with verifiable AI, this whole paradigm that I'll describe now. I'll say more in a second about what verifiability really means, but the gist is that you want the functioning of the AI to be verified in the sense that it wasn't interfered with. You know that the output you're getting was the result of the inputs, the questions you asked or whatever, being run on that specific model that you're using, and there was no interference, right? So if you have that, then all of these higher use cases, these use cases where more power, more responsibility is flowing to these AIs, they all unlock. So that's where you can really have these agents running in your company. and you can treat them like people. You can give them responsibility. Then we also have these unstoppable organizations. So we have the true AI-run hedge fund company, etc. Similar for assistants, you might have some assistants that are still run in a centralized manner, but you can have your assistants being run in a verified way where you can trust them. That's kind of what I'm drawing here. I'm showing the world computer, then these AVSs, these EigenLayer systems, which I'll talk about in a second, extending out of the world computer and providing a foundation for these AIs. Then finally, we have what's perhaps the most interesting possible use case for AI, in my opinion. And this is something that I've thought about for a while and have intended to make a video about. And this is the idea of integrating AI into government and rethinking the structure of government in the face of this new technology, because it's such a fundamental shift in technology. It's such a breakthrough that you really do need to rethink government from the ground up. So for example, if you have an LLM, you train it on the corpus of the world's writing and so on. So it's a little bit like a human mind with all of that information compressed into it. That LLM could in theory serve in government as a representative, right? Suppose you train this model specifically on the base corpus of the internet, but then on top of that, you apply the founding documents of your country and you fine tune or train the model on that. So you're tuning the model toward the ideal representative. And you could take this a step further and allow each citizen to submit, let's say, 1,000 words of what they care about, what they actually want to see changed in their country or their state or whatever. And we could further train the model on that information. So that would be the first true representative government. And I'm not saying that would be the best form of government. Maybe democracy is not even the right form of government. But the point is, when you have this technology, you can start to radically reimagine government. But again, I think this sort of thing is simply not even feasible unless you have verifiable AI. If we're going to elevate AIs into this kind of position where they're potentially integrated into the highest structures that sit on top of the rest of our civilization and help us to steer through time, if you're going to do that, the thing has to be solid. It has to be transparent. So what does verifiability really mean? As I'm sure you're aware, there's this whole pipeline involved in the creation of and functioning of these AI minds, these LLMs. And if we're going to elevate AIs to the highest levels of responsibility in terms of the running of our civilization, we're going to need to be sure that this whole pipeline is rock solid. We need to make sure that there's no injection of bias at any of these places, because that, of course, could influence the AI. So this begins with verifiable data. We need to be sure that the data we're using to train the model has not been biased. Any addition or subtraction of data can influence the AI which is created at the end of the training process. We also need verifiable training, right? We need to make sure that the LLM, the model that we get at the end of the training process, is in fact the result of training on the data we wanted with any other parameters we've requested. So that covers the creation, the birthing of this AI mind. Then we need to think about the thinking of the AI once it's created. So we need verifiable inference. We need to make sure, ideally we need proof that the output of this AI is in fact the result of the input we've given it applied to this model. And as part of that thinking process, we also have tool use. So if this model is going to call out to any of these external tools like Wolfram Alpha or Wikipedia, internet sources, oracles, etc., we need to make sure that the results given back to the AI from these sources is correct and hasn't been intercepted or altered in some way. We also need unstoppable memory because, as I'm sure you're aware, these LLMs don't really have memory. They're kind of sparked to life anew each time they're prompted, and they don't remember what happened before, unless, of course, you create an external kind of memory system. So we need a system like EigenDA, which can serve as this external memory. So EigenDA can allow for these AIs to post their data, like the history of what they've been working on and doing, and they can do that in an encrypted way, and then pull the information each time they're summoned to life and load it into their context, and then therefore, have this persistent memory. And we need this, this memory has to go somewhere solid. It can't just go to like AWS or whatever. It needs to be some unstoppable source. And that is what DA systems really are. And then we also have the Ethereum, the world computer, this unstoppable financial system, so that these systems can act. They can take financial actions. And we need that to be unstoppable too. All of these components have to be unstoppable, uncensorable, and unbiased, right? We need to have transparency all the way through this whole process. So for each component in this pipeline, there are EigenLayer AVSs, which provide that corresponding service. So I've drawn them as little cubes here, and we have AVSs involved in inference, tool use, training, etc. And so I won't go into a lot of detail about how these work, but for example, verifiable inference, there's at least two different approaches you can take to achieving verifiable inference. For example, you could do ZK proofs. You could generate a ZK proof, which proves that some output is in fact the result of some input applied over this specific model, this set of weights. And that's great, it's super solid, but the downside is it's very computationally expensive. Inference is already a lot of computation, and then to do a ZK proof over that is a lot more, right? A huge amount of computation. So an alternative is you can use crypto economic incentives. You can have a system where there's some operators who are running the inference for you, and you have some scheme whereby these operators have put up some capital and they risk losing it if they manipulate the output of this inference. So there's different kinds of schemes that can be developed to keep each stage of this pipeline solid and honest. EigenLayer is the kind of platform which you can build these things on, because you can build any kind of, there's a huge design space of AVSs you can build, and therefore you can build systems that do each of these different things. So this diagram that I've drawn here gives you an idea at a high level of what this AVS verifiable AI ecosystem looks like. But it's actually a simplification. If we look at this slide here from ETH Denver, we can kind of zoom in and see that this AVS ecosystem is becoming even larger and including even more components of AI. So there's the brain, which includes verifiable inference, talked about that, training data and benchmarks, also GPU markets where these AIs can run in a decentralized manner on decentralized hardware, right? We then have perception, including verifiable internet access, real world data like geolocation, verifiable intent satisfaction, privacy components, auxiliary compute, proof of human, proof of device. So all of these things are, like, one way to think about it is you have this mind, this AI mind, and we want the creation of it to be verified, solid. We want the functioning of it to be verified and solid. Then we want its perception, its eyes and ears and touch, etc. Any access to the outside world also needs to be verified and solid. And then its actions. You're building this like virtual being, right? And it needs to be able to act and take in information and think and all these things. And we need all of that to be verifiable, because the alternative is that it's not. And then in that world, it's controlled by some small group of people, most likely, right? So you can see some of these AVS categories, and this is a little snapshot of kind of some of the systems and protocols being developed. And obviously the space is continuing to evolve. Thanks for watching. I hope that made sense. There's a lot that I didn't cover, but this was meant to be kind of a high level overview of why we want a verifiable AI, why it matters. Maybe I'll do another video getting more in depth on how it actually works. So maybe look out for that. I'm also working on videos for oracles, zk-TLS, and like 20 other topics. So watch out for those. And thanks for watching. See you next time.